Jay's Knotty Wood. It's a one-man shop. This is my journey into woodworking. Come learn with me.
Hello and welcome to the newest LED sign, the biggest LED sign I've done to date. This video will feature sped up content, a lot of different areas between the bandsaw, scroll saw, and placing these pieces on the sign. This project overall was kind of happenstance. It wasn't really something planned, and I went into this local barber shop a few weeks prior, got my hair cut, and just loved the atmosphere and the ladies in there. Yes, it's ran by ladies. It is a barber shop full of ladies. But besides the point, the atmosphere, the vibe, the conversations, the people, good people. It inspired me and it pushed me to do something for them. It started out as working on the parking lot just because they weren't really happy with it. We've talked about it. And I was going to do some little signs to designate each parking spot. Possibly then they were worried about the fence and the owners and what they could and couldn't do. So I started off by making a smaller piece of the razor blade with the barbershop handle. And then I started with the letter. The A was like maybe an inch tall, and I decided my fingers were not going to last if I made the sign that small, at least at this point in time with what I have. So with that thought process, I went in and created the letters in the font that is as close that I could find to what they used, and blew them up, printed them out, and they are pretty big. I mean, in comparison to the one I had. I did not measure them. I don't know how tall these letters are exactly, but I just started and got after it. So the first full day of the stream here and what I was doing, I completely focused on the bandsaw and getting out all of these letters. Now, at this time when I'm doing this, I didn't realize that the barber I went to has actually just started not too long ago. So that's cool. It's neat the way things kind of fall together and put in place. The idea here is this shop has just been in business officially over a year, just barely over a year. So they're a new business, a small business in town. They're local, they're real close, and this is actually starting to come out to, in my head, give me an idea of how I can get a local footprint on what I've done with these LED lights and what I can do possibly with other projects, etc. I am not one to be pushy about sales and what I do. If you like it, you like it. You'll pick something up or think of something and I'll work with you. So it's very interesting and what's the word? It's kind of scary to have a local footprint, honestly. Trying to get this growing at the right pace, in the right way, and be able to have this hobby turn into something and make this my business. That's my ultimate goal here. Here is that this will give me a footprint and I could get local stuff. I did not charge them for this. There was no push to charge. I was not trying to force a display or anything. If they liked it, they put it up. If they didn't put it up, it is what it is. I had practice. I gained a lot of knowledge and learning from this, a lot of patience and letter sense, I guess, with the bandsaw and the scroll saw. So throughout this process, it's practice. It actually has me thinking I can redo my logo how I want to instead of what I was doing before. So we will be working on that here soon as well. Back to the barbers. My barber is a newer barber in this barbershop, and she was able to see progress of this throughout. I sent her pictures and updates. She was showing the other barber, which is one of the owners, a couple of pictures, and then at the end she kind of stopped showing pictures off. So it was pretty much just my barber is the only one that really knew what this was coming of and the process of it. Both the owners, one had no clue, the other one had a slight idea of it, so that was pretty neat, especially when I presented it to them. Throughout the project and the bandsawing specifically here, there was a lot of stuff that I realized I need to get better at. One, changing the blade of the bandsaw. At one point, the bandsaw blade busted. I ordered a couple, so I have backups. But changing it just sometimes is fine. Other times it just doesn't want to stay where it's at. I also think I need to get better at understanding and adjusting the tensioners and all of that with the bandsaw, just to perfect it a little bit more and be more precise with things. As we switch here, we're going to the razor. A lot of the cuts that I've done could easily be done on the scroll saw. I am more comfortable with the bandsaw at this point than I am the scroll saw, although I will get a lot of practice up here on the scroll saw coming. The razor here with the barber pole, I just took 2 full sheets of printer paper, printed them up, blew it up as big as I could to get the scale to be the same as the lettering and the overall logo that they sent me to look at. This here is going to mark the end of our bandsaw engagement. A lot of shapes and structures here, a lot of work that helped me get better with the bandsaw. The idea of taking out the blade and putting it back in, frustration levels are high, but it is what it is. Now on to the scroll sawing. With these letters, I pre-drilled the holes in the negative space, I guess it is, that I'm trying to cut out. Drilled the holes so I can get the scroll blade through it and attached into the tensioner on the scroll saw. Now, transitioning from the bandsaw to the scroll saw, I have difficulty adjusting to the speed of things, because on the bandsaw you can push a little faster. Scroll saw, if you push too fast, you're going to snap a blade, and, well, I went through about 6-7 blades on the scroll saw. Just because I was turning it too fast, pushing it too fast. Yeah, just a little impatient with it, and need to slow things down on this a little bit more. The other piece that transitions is the tensioner, and where all that goes. I possibly need to tune this a little bit, if that's a thing. Figure out just how tight the tensioner should be, etc. That said, the time spent on the scroll saw is always valuable. It's going to help me get more familiar with it, more comfortable with it, and realize in my brain that I can do these things on the scroll saw in a better aspect, in a better frame than the bandsaw. Possibly. Maybe. I don't know if I'm ever going to get that comfortable with this, but I mean, again, any time on a machine, it's time on a machine. It's putting time in, getting that experience, and repetition with what you need to do. All of these letters are essentially just, a little project in itself, a little step along the way, and each time I finish one and it's clean and I get a good cut, and it feels good. It really does. It's just another step in the process of understanding what I'm doing, understanding the cuts, understanding the machines, the feel for the machines, feel for the wood, how it's cutting, what section it's cutting, where I'm going through, and the idea of each piece coming out just right, and then you have to add them all together. It just feels good with each little piece. So you have all these little successes on the way, hopefully. Sometimes they're not successes, and you got to start over. Throughout this project, at the end here, I had all the letters done, and I was working on, what was I doing? Some spacing or something. I can't remember exactly what I was doing with it. And the V, here, I dropped the V, and it was thin, and it popped. It, broke off the small arm of the V, if you will. You can't tell that it was dropped, because, it's not there on the project. The V's set in place and all that, but there's little things that happen that can just keep you motivated, keep you going on these things. And if you're somebody sitting here and you're not sure if you can do this, yeah, you can. Just try. Just give it a start. I was there with no experience, no nothing, and I just started. If you notice here the little fan, you might be questioning that. There's a fan on the school saw on the plate here next to it. It is to help clear off some of that dust and debris that sits on top and allows me to see the line where I'm going. And the machine should be bolted down. It's not. It's moving slightly, but I'm also keeping down pressure on it as much as possible consciously to keep it from moving around. But you'll notice me here nudge it around every so often. This bench I made is not, I did not make it in intention to have the school saw on here, but I use it that way. It's a better height. Here we go, all the letters there, a cut above barbers. There's another piece missing here. I have a bar I need to put in the middle. We'll get to that here shortly. But for now, it is time to move on to figuring out the backing and understanding where I'm going with that piece, because typically my logos with the LEDs glow from behind the logo. This is a very open spaced logo, if you will. So the plan is to give it a full backing and get after that. If you notice here, the letters and the razor blade are painted. I did all the painting off camera, off stream. Don't have footage of it just because it was something I can do in between while I was working on different things. I hit the spray paint and acrylic paint through all of this. Hand painted and drawn out on the barber pole there. I mean, I had the image to go through. I just kind of sketched off and then painted through it. Here we're going with 1/2-inch plywood. That's going to be the backing. We'll slide it through, figure it out. We're going to use 2x3 backing boards for the frame behind the sign. That will allow me a ledge to put LEDs on. It will also allow me a solid surface to where they can hang it and have the hanging hardware on something stable that's not going to push through. I used one of the 2x3s that is as straight as you can get from a box store as a straight edge here. We'll slide through the board and get us our piece. Measure 82,000 times before you cut, just to be sure. This is the biggest LED sign I've ever made, as I said before. So at this point I have the letters cut out and I'm starting to feel the tension of needing to get this the way I want it, the way it's envisioned, and just precise, right? Because that's the biggest thing, is precise as you can be. With woodworking, not everything is absolutely perfect all the time, so we want to control what we can when we can. Speaking of control, these LEDs are perfect for what I'm looking for. I picked them specifically for the idea that the shop plays music and there's talk. You know, it's a barber shop, so there's always conversations going on and stuff like that. So what I did was I picked LEDs that are voice or sound music reactive. So then if they have the sign on and they're talking, it's going to go. They have their music going, it's on, it's going. And the idea was just to kind of help pull that shop talk and kind of that environment and have the decor interact with that social environment a little bit. The strange thing about these is they're 32 feet long. It said on the box it was in 2 strands. Typically the 2 strands have 2 power sources. This one was all plugged in all the way through, all connected, and I was like, okay, well, that's a problem we're gonna have to solve and figure out. A little curveball in the build is typically I'm able to disconnect one of the strands if need be. It ends up turning out the exact length I need, so I was able to go around one direction with the LEDs, one strand around 1.5 times, and the other way 1.5 times, so it went out perfect. So there's a little overlap where there's 4 strands, but most of it is 2. This part is the bar or dowel piece in the middle I was telling you about earlier. We blacked out the background. We're gonna go white and black, and it makes that blade pop really well. The red bar The red bar there was my touch. The bar typically in their logo is either white or black. So on their merch, their t-shirts, it was a black lettering, black bar on a white t-shirt, and the colored barber pole razor, or the opposite, it's white lettering, white bar, black shirt, and the colored barbershop pole razor. I put the red in there and it popped. It really worked out well. The cool part about it is when I showed the ladies this and the owners were like sitting there looking at it, and they have actually decided to adopt that red bar as their new logo change, because it just makes everything pop that much more. If you have made it this far in and you haven't hit a button yet, please hit a button. If you're here just to troll me, I'm good with that. Find me on all your platforms at Jay's Nutty Wood. So the plan here is we're placing these letters. I am very stressed at this point. These things need to be precise, straight, level, placed evenly top to bottom, side to side, bar, all of it. I take these edges that I've cut down. They are the deck boards I actually cut down into 1x2s, so they should be fairly straight. I level them, square them up, and clamp them down so I can figure where my spacing is on this. It looks pretty good. Now the problem is I don't have a spacing for the razor blade or the bar. I mean, I've measured both sides and that's that, so I just need to make sure it stays. And I mean, I did a pretty good job on it, if I do say so myself. I mean, I was impressed with how straight and even this thing came out, and just boosted what I feel I can do and my confidence in this, and that's good. The placement of these letters, none of them are braided. Typically I would take and brad these, but I did not want them to fall apart. As you can see, some of the edges are very thin, like on the U, the V, the A's specifically, and certain parts of the S and the E. So what I did was take CA glue, super glue, and wood glue. What I did was I put wood glue down the center of the thick parts on a strand, and then I didn't spread it out, I just left it there. And I put super glue around the edge and just pressed it down. The super glue is acting as the brad in this instance, and then the wood glue will again dry up and permanently hold it. I use Titebond 3 as well for this. The other process is the double glue, is because of the paint already on there. I want it to make sure it stays and gets through that. Sometimes you have the paint and that finish, things don't want to adhere as they should. Throughout the process of placing these letters, I had to channel the patience very much so, because I'm sitting here for about a minute and a half on each of these letters, placing them down. As I'm doing this and the time goes on, the heat is getting worse. It was about 105 on this day in the garage. It's open, so hot. Anyways, just pressing, pushing, pressing, lights on while I'm doing this, just to kind of entertain those that are watching, and it is coming out amazing. I am so stoked with this, and at this point in this process, I just have the last few letters here to do. They're all marked up. I'm taking a pencil, just putting a line, so when I flip it over and glue it, I can put it right back on that line on my edge and just keep going. And we're pressing, and we're pressing. As I get through these letters, the U there on the thin part kind of warped outwards, so like the paint, when I did that, it just soaked in and the wood kind of moved and turned, so I had to make sure I pressed down on it and hold it in line a little bit there. Doubling up with these boards just to make sure that once I think it's set from my pressing, that adds the weight and helps continue to have that pressure on it while it sets completely and fully, especially with the super glue. Sometimes it works quicker, sometimes it's not working so quick, but at the end of the day, these letters are not going anywhere. And the sign is a beauty. It is very clean and it is very catchy. It pops, it does its purpose, and I'm very, very proud of this project. The best part is most of my projects I send out, I don't get to go see them. This one's down the street, and if I'm ever in my doubts, I can go down, sit, and just look at it and go, I did that. I made that. Biggest one yet. More to come. I can't wait for this journey.
And that's a wrap. Thank you for watching. Hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment. Leave feedback. Whatever you want to do. Hit that share button. And I will see you next time on Jay's Naughty World.